This is the Stockbridge Bowl Stewardship Commission meeting for March 4th, 2022. And we will begin, and John's here. So can we approve the February 18th, 2022, or are there corrections that need to be done for them?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
So Charlie, and a second?
Second.
From February 18th, 2022.
Yes. Thank you, Charlie. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, pass. So now let's get to those November meeting minutes of 21. So we had corrections, I remember in the past. I sent a copy of the original ones. Did anyone look over them and see where they wanted corrections so we can get those cleaned up?
I haven't had a chance, so.
Neither have I. I didn't either, Jamie. I'm sorry. I didn't have a chance.
All right, could we, if you don't mind, Ken, I don't want to be grumpy, but can we try to get them passed for the February 18th meeting?
We just did.
What?
Didn't we just take a vote on February 18th?
No, the March 18th meeting.
Oh,
Can we get them done for that? Like,
Yes, I promise.
all right, so November, okay, so we will hold that and for March 18th. Okay, thank you, guys. So do we have any, I thought we'd put it first because we sometimes run out of time. If we had any public questions, concerns, or suggestions. Doesn't look like there have anybody from the public. But maybe from the group, if the group had any questions before we got started.
I think Pat is here from the public.
Okay. Any questions?
Well, I have some. Do you want to have questions about the matrix that you sent around, or are we?
No, we're doing that next. It's on the agenda.
Right.
Okay, I don't have any questions.
Okay, great. So we'll go on to the bullet points of the matrix. So I did a rough kind of draft as you had asked me to do. And I sent sort of just and we can fix it, we can, update, we can adjust it, but I just put some ideas that we had written down in our notes. So who would like to start? Anyone?
Recording in progress.
does anybody have now of it?
I'd like to make a couple of additions to it based on the minutes that we just approved, because I think that there are a couple of points in there that or at least one point that hasn't been included that I think should be included. So I brought up the last time that I thought that the Stockbridge Bowl Association have been making a very good effort towards the education, which is a very essential component of a lake management plan. But I think that we should, incorporate that. I know that the SBA has been doing a good job, but I think that ought to be part of the basic plan. I don't see that in this matrix, and I'm just suggesting that it should be included because I think that's it. Number one. Number two, I thought that we were organizing it, what we were doing slightly differently, and that we were attempting to prioritize things. For example, the harvesting and the dredging, to put that up front so that everybody knew that we really wanted to get that done. And then in addition, have, the general maintenance stuff that we already had in place, that we already knew should be continued, that there didn't need to have any further discussion about, like the testing, things like that, and the zebra mussel checking and stuff like that ought to be up there. And then, we go down to some of the other ones. So in other words, we were parsing this differently than it's parsed here by maintenance actions, irregularities, and stuff like that. I thought there was an urgent thing at the top that we needed to, or maybe urgent is the wrong word, but an immediate need kind of thing that I don't see there. So those are my comments.
I guess the way I understood it was that we were getting everything written down and then we were going to talk about it today of what we wanted on the top, like first, second, third, and fourth. So
That's
maybe I
exactly
just,
what I'm doing. That's exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's fine.
Let's do it.
okay.
Yeah.
So Charlie, do you want to start?
Well, yeah, I'd like to add in the education.
Yeah, we
Because I
got,
think that omitted. And then I think that we ought to put right at the top that, so that we can do this when the ice melts, and I mean, that we're right on top of it. That, we have that we're moving along with the dredging idea and with the harvesting idea, and we just, have that. And also the monitoring of the lake that we have in place already, and the zebra mussels, and however else we think we need to continue to do the programs we already have in place. And then we can look at the other stuff. That's what I think.
I think these should be broken down a little differently. I think we should have a priority list things that we need to do and things that we are ongoing doing, like
Right.
monitoring zebra mussels, things like that, because they're different.
Right.
These are the priority.
Gary, I'm sorry I misspoke, because that's exactly what I'm thinking.
Okay,
Priority actions then,
yeah.
yeah.
right, because initially I made a chart this way, like vertically, not horizontally, but yeah.
We'll figure it out.
Okay, so priority actions, dredging.
Dredging.
Yeah, when I put
Dredging
that
is
as A,
Can I,
go ahead.
I'm just thinking, just not to throw in another whatever, but I thought that perhaps it should be by year, like 0 to 3 years.
Yeah.
What time?
Like in the timing, because I think the lake management plan is based a little more on the timing. So 0 means current.
Okay.
Like we need not to go this way if the group doesn't want to go this way, but that's the way.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Each item should have a asterisk after it saying if it's going to be immediate or within the.
oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay,
That'll work.
Right. 'Cause
Yeah.
we want to
Okay.
get this
So you
to
want
GZA,
Yeah.
so they can get this going.
And NHESP already expressed they would like to see a timeline.
Yeah,
We don't
They
need,
expressed it that way.
it
in
doesn't
terms
need
of
to be more than a page long,
right.
right, I don't,
Right, it could just be a chart even.
Yeah.
That we pass off to GZA.
like a bullet item.
I think a horizontal timeline kind of thing, like 0 to 3, whatever, however we want to break that out.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Well, now that I think about it, I think we should do that, but I think what Charlie and Gary is saying is important of the maintenance, of also putting in maintenance that always has to be done.
Oh, yeah.
that was
I
on
mean,
my
not just 0 to
ongoing chart.
3, but
This is ongoing.
ongoing.
Yes.
Because on the top, I did do that. And then I put like the dates,
Right.
like lake
Right.
harvesting happens May to September, water testing monthly, April.
As long as you wrote these things down is great, because that helps us then visualize it and see how we want to do it.
The other thing is we're going to have to maybe use an asterisk or some way to indicate that harvesting is an ongoing maintenance item. However, that's based on whether or not we're allowed to do it in conjunction with another
Well,
Project.
I don't think we should put that asterisk.
in there, but I think
Yeah.
we should make that note so they understand that we understand that we got a couple of situations. If the herbicide goes forward, then we can't obviously
the
harvest in those areas. If dredging is going on, they may or may not allow us to do some limited harvesting. But I wanted them to know that we're sensitive to that.
You're bringing up,
I don't agree with that.
What do you mean?
But go ahead, Gary.
you're bringing up, chemicals in the lake. I think doing this in a priority list, it should be way at the end, because this is something that we're going to have to do after dredging. I think dredging is number one, and that's going to take a year or two?
Well, our
on the-
plan is to get that done in 2 years.
Okay.
We were supposed to do 2022, 2 years ago. I guess we lost 2 years, whatever. But the game plan, if I remember right, is 2024, 23, 24. But we have to get moving to get all these things.
No, and I agree with you.
And I think I put that 1 to 2 years on the
Yeah.
bullet points.
We oughta,
Oh, I want to go back to harvester a second. If I may say, I don't think we shouldn't hold ourselves back on the harvester. They will do that if they think, I think you may have new personnel, you may have whatever. I just think harvester should be we need to do harvester. If they want to stop us, then they'll let us know.
Gotcha.
I think I go with Michael, like, because
Yeah.
we still have to get
You know,
that
we don't
3-year
wanna tell them.
application in.
Right, I
And
understand.
then
Yeah.
we modify it.
Yeah, I mean, that should be done on a regular basis, and it's understood that if something comes along and says you can't,
Yeah, but we don't have to tell them.
no, we should just say that we do.
No, I don't mean it negatively, but who knows? Somebody new can say, this is crazy, you guys should be harvesting.
And that's in the same category as testing.
Yeah.
Testing should be done on a regular
Yeah,
basis.
that,
Right,
absolutely.
exactly.
There's no
Right,
way that won't happen because
Right.
there's no conflict with any of these
There's no
other
conflict,
projects.
right.
Do we have all the permits in place for harvesting right now?
Yes.
Yes,
From
Mike's
last
been
year.
talking to him. Yep.
So can I ask a question? Roxanne, did you bring that point up because you feel that they're especially sensitive to this and they've already told us specifically to do this? Or do you think that Michael's right, that we ought to stay away from it and just not muddy the water, let them muddy it when they need to?
Right.
I'm only bringing it up because NHESP was fairly adamant about this. You can't be doing two different major projects, and they did include harvesting in that conversation. So that was my concern about it, that they're sensitive to that.
Think that's negotiable with them? I mean, if we were doing dredging, couldn't we do harvesting at the same time? They have nothing to do with each other.
We don't think so, but Misty Ann seemed to
You know,
think so. She seemed to think that would be problematic.
We could make a good point there, I think.
I think that's, first of all, we got 2 years to get to that point.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't want to waste,
And we
in
can
terms of
have
the
that
energy,
conversation.
to worry about that.
Awfully quickly, too.
Yes.
I think we should
Yeah.
hold that, put a bookmark there.
Right. My thinking is that in 2 years, if for that summer we can't do it, well, then for that one summer, we can't do it.
Right.
But we'll know that in
Exactly.
2 years when we're ready to dredge.
Or we negotiate in terms of.
Yeah.
You don't want us to do it, but we really feel
But-
this is necessary in these
I-
areas. Can we do?
And
this?
another aside on harvesting is we need to do it, we know that, but when people don't see the harvester on the lake, they get really nervous and we start getting a lot of rumblings, from the general public, which we don't
So
want.
we like
Right.
that visual.
Right.
Can we get some, like the police they have dummies sitting in police cars. Can we get a dummy harvester that'll go out there?
Charlie, this is being recorded.
That's too important.
Hiring a new.
That's too important a project to joke about, Charlie.
All right. So we feel that dredging is the number one priority. I think.
Right, and I
that's
put
pretty
that
clear.
A on our list.
Yeah.
I did put I think I put herbicide down below even hydro raking because I felt like,
Pat, you're on? Pat?
I am on.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's good to hear you laughing. That's good. I think, Pat, in the last meeting, you said that maybe we should just hold off on hydro raking,
oh, no, I didn't.
or did I misunderstand you last meeting just because of the sensitivity of that issue of what happened?
Yeah, well, it's not even so much that, Mike, but yes, you did hear me correctly.
Okay,
Because it seems like DEP is now considering hydro raking almost like dredging when they're looking at it. But I think the more important point is, I think that when we are able to do the dredging down the outlet and on the side of the island, the issue that hydro raking addresses most forcefully are the water lilies. And I think we need to see what the dredging actually accomplishes in terms of reduction of water lilies before we spent more money and time to try to get permits and what have you for hydro raking. So yes, Mike, I am agreeing. You heard me right.
yeah, I think this committee put that in out of respect for the
Yeah.
SBA's desire to do that, but I personally agree with you, Pat, on this, really.
And I
Getting a permit to do that.
I wanted to be
Yeah.
thorough.
Yeah.
And we could always take
Yeah.
this off.
Oh, and there's a number of things here like hydro raking and the use of benthic mats and the use of drawdowns, which are all
Potential.
potential actions that we might want to take in the future, but they're not high priority items.
So, but we had
One other high priority item, though, that we do have is the hand pulling of the water chestnuts. this spring. We have to take care of the invasive,
I thought we needed
Where are they?
a.
well, we're going to have to go through that
Yeah, but that still should be on the list. What the.
priority
What we
item.
have to do.
Don't deal with that.
Can I put invasives on the chart?
That's DEP though, that's not Heritage.
I put, well, plant survey,
But
but
if we're looking at a timeline and something that's a high priority to be done soon,
I don't know.
I think it's got to be included.
So Jamie, just to organize this just a little differently, so on the maintenance, we should put all these things on the maintenance.
Right, like I did
Remediation
today.
actions later on.
There you go.
I think this is an important thing to bring up at this point, just because we're sorting things out a little bit. We want to make sure that a couple of things are on there. Now, for example, in the testing and the studies at the bottom, we say that there's invasive plants and species, but we also, and I think this is an important aspect of it, is to do an inventory of plants, not necessarily invasive ones, is an important aspect. And I'm going to add on just at this point, this is not an urgent item or anything like that, but I think it needs to be in the mix, is that we might want to identify peripheral ecological areas in the watershed. So for example, how important is the area below the dam? And what are the consequences of what we do below the dam? You know, I mean, it just so that everybody knows we're thinking about this. You know, if we do dredging, we increase the flow, or we do this, that, or the other thing, what is that going to do to the area below the dam? And what areas are important there that we need to know? And also, let's say on the other side of the causeway, we used to have a kind of a reservoir there that I don't think we can access completely at this point with dredging, but we want to be able to understand where we can go with that. And then there are other ecological areas around the bowl that we should be looking at and identifying and being sure that we're not overlooking. So I would just like to throw that into the mix. The inventory of the plants, not just the invasive species.
Okay.
I think that goes beyond just simply plants. I mean, an inventory, we need
Flora
to.
and fauna.
Right. That's a long-term goal. We would like to know all that stuff.
Can I?
Go ahead.
Charlie, I think maybe what the dredging means outside of the bowl, the silt removal, there was not that much silt 60 years ago. And for some reason it worked, the flow of the water. I just can't imagine there being much of a difference if the silt is 3 feet lower or 4 feet lower. I think we might get into a lot of rabbit holes, as they say, if we start going into outside of the bowl.
We have had,
I mean, it's a lot of energy to begin with, but to do the resource of finding out what does that mean beyond the bowl. But I don't see, do you see an issue if there's 3-4 feet?
Yeah, I see two related issues that we should be aware of. And I don't think that these require urgent stuff, but I think they would be things that a well thought out lake management plan should be considering as a long-term goal. And that is to identify those places around the lake that we can use for various reasons that would be helpful or that might be vulnerable to what we do in the lake.
Maybe I misunderstood you.
Yeah, so that below the dam, I think is a potential vulnerable spot. I don't know what those vulnerabilities would be, but I'm just thinking it might be. And then similarly, over on the other side of the causeway, we used to use that as I think John Biacco set that up. Coming down from Lillybrook, there was a regularly dredged or periodically dredged area that for stormwater runoff or whatever you want to call it. And it was, and then it became, it languished, and maybe we can access it and use it in some ways, and maybe we can't. But I don't know that because I don't know what the current status is. And that's the kind of thing that I think we should have as a long-term plan, so that everybody knows that we're looking eventually at those things. But it's not an urgent thing. But I think it should be in the mix.
Charlie, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
The area on the other side, east of the causeway, has been considered its own ecological system now, and they don't want us to do anything in there. That was from DEP. And as far as what goes on beyond the dam, we've had some real heavy drawdowns, and sometimes, remember a few years ago when the water was up in people's backyards in the channel, when we had probably, I would say 500 cubic feet a second going over the overflow, and everything was fine down below. Some minor flooding, but That was like when we have 100-year flood.
You know, it's interesting what you bring up, Charlie, about east of the causeway, is that it was always the silt, it was a hole to collect the silt.
Retention pond.
It was a retention pond.
Yeah.
And it was always cleaned down, and then for last 30 years or whatever it wasn't, so it filled up and it became a bog. And this is actually a micro of what we are concerned happening to the rest of the lake if we don't.
Right.
We have a retention river now in Stockbridge Bowl. So what you're bringing up is a very good point as to a lesson of what could happen if we don't do the dredging.
We were told that if we start in there, it's going to be a whole can of worms that, and we can mention it, I think, as something we'd like to do in the distant future.
Right.
But other than that, I wouldn't go too far deep into it.
Right.
Okay. All right, so,
Can
go ahead.
I just wanted to return to what Roxanne said initially about the water chestnuts. That in particular, but invasives that we discover on an ongoing basis, we may not know what they are, but I always think that that has to be on a top of a priority list so that we can deal with it before it becomes a huge problem. And I think the water chestnuts is an excellent example of getting on top of that before it really blankets the lake. So from the management plan, I mean, we can talk about water chestnuts in particular, but in general, if we see a new invasive, I think we need to prioritize jumping on that so it doesn't become a huge problem later on.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I agree.
You know, it's almost like we have the zebra mussel committee. I almost feel like we should have an invasive plan just once a year or twice a year, a volunteer group that really goes out and identifies,
Yeah, that's a great idea.
you know?
Yeah.
Because it's so loose, you know, we just see it as individuals, but I have no idea where they are. Gary just asked me where they were.
Right.
I didn't know how to answer him.
They'll change from time to time.
Yeah, but someone that could really map it out. Look, this is the area, and maybe we have to go in, get permission as a town, and we have a group of 5, 6, whatever it is, and go in there and,
Well, I mean, I think the first step in that is Conservation Commission is using Tom Coote. And so I think he's coming in this summer again. And so that's, you know, your first heads up of where exactly is this problem.
right, I don't think anyone knows where it is. I mean,
You
you
know,
might know, but the general public doesn't
Right.
know what to look out for.
right, exactly. But have a group that can then go and follow up and then really identify.
We'll have the zebra mussel inspectors look for that. I'll find out from these people what to look for, how they come, you know, are they attached or they come in seeds or whatever. We'll find out and then we'll look for them.
Well, how would they know?
Caesar.
How would they don't go out?
I'll find out from DEP or from Conservation Commission and we'll.
Right. Well, we know we already have them and we have to get rid of them, so.
Right. Well, we talked about it at conservation. I remember we needed to get a permission. We have to fill out a form. It has to go through,
It's an RDA.
yeah. So we had talked about it, so I don't know,
You need an RDA for pulling?
hand pulling.
Oh, yeah.
For hand pulling the water chestnuts.
That's kind of it's a routine.
But it has to.
Yeah, it's an emergency response type of thing.
Okay, well, once we identify them and where they are, we'll do an RDA and we'll start pulling them.
Right. So, where, any other prioritizations on our list that we want to fix, change, add?
These are big priorities that we're putting.
No, I know.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying.
We need to get this list with all the different parts, and then we can start, like on the next meeting, we can start with some of the, you know, the bullet points and go A, B, C, D under each bullet point with things that we want to look at. You know, like under education, the use of soaps, use of fertilizers, things like that. So.
Well, I mean, it would be nice if we could get something to GZA that's the general outline and the general priorities that we've identified. And then we flush out the details after that, because obviously this is like a living document. It's going to be changing.
Because it sounds like we've almost got this, you know, the major points
Right.
lined up. It's just how we present them.
Okay.
Well, I like Gary's idea and Roxanne's idea as a sort of a combination. I think we should look at our priority items right now in detail as much as we can. and see what we can do with them as much as we can, and then be ready to put them forward. I mean, the whole package with Roxanne's idea that the rest of it will be developed, because we're coming to the ice melting period. We don't want to be having a delayed meeting, let's say next month for some reason. And I'd like to see us moving along. And the idea, this is a big document, this is a big set of concepts, and we should focus on the ones that need to be handled now. And the other ones should fall under what Roxanne is saying, that we can develop them in more detail as we go along. But we know there are certain items now that we need to look in detail, just as Gary's saying, we need to do that today. I think we need to do it as best we can right now, so that we have the details for the priority items as best we can. And then next meeting, if we weren't able to work out any details for those priority items, we should be working on those details before the next meeting. And then we can move along with what Roxanne said about the ongoing stuff with the other stuff.
Yeah, the least, the lowest on this list, basically, in terms of timeline, is doing an inventory, which would be an ongoing inventory of all flora and fauna. So we know what it is we have and what we're protecting, and where our areas of invasive species, et cetera, et cetera. But we want to know what the native plants are. We want to know that we're not losing some rare species of native plants, for instance, or species of fish. We want to understand what the impacts are of anything that we end up doing. But that's an ongoing situation. And that can even be added as an addendum. In other words, if GZA just put in some generic statement about that, then all that information as it's gathered goes in as an addendum. So
let's start, Charlie, let's just start then. Are we saying let's just concentrate on zero, what we have to do when the spring comes, or what we have to do now, and the first 3 years, and list those?
Yeah, we've got a general idea of what the plan should be. I think we should now zoom in and get as much detail as we can for the dredging, for the harvesting, so that we already have the details for the, so Roxanne and I, for example, we pushed the idea of the testing for the cyanobacteria bloom stuff this way. We went into great detail about it. We got it all done, and we did it like that. I think we need to do the detail now for the dredging and the harvesting as best we can, find out where we don't know what we're talking about, make sure that at the next meeting we do know what we're talking about and have it in place. And meanwhile, all this other stuff, then we can prioritize that as we go along. That'll be the next task. But the task we have at hand now is, because we have a time-related problem, our time-related constraints, we should look on those time-related constraints now in detail. That's what I think. The dredging and the harvesting, and if I'm missing something else, whatever something else is, that needs to be done now. So
we can incorporate, we can talk to Greg, and we can incorporate what we already have, what we know about the dredging project.
Right. I mean, there's so much information currently on the dredging. In an outline, we can give you an outline of it, but how detailed, I think the DEP and the NHESP already know, basically. I mean, to educate them is crazy, because they know it as well as we know it at this point.
They want to
Michael,
Wait, Charlie.
let me just take your point the other way, because I think you're right.
Okay.
What don't we know that we need to know before we put this forward? About dredging?
The actual time.
That's like a very philosophical question. What don't we know? What don't we know?
Guys,
I'm
we don't
serious.
know when we can get permits. We don't know specifically.
We don't know timing.
What that timing of the permitting is going to be, but
Right.
everything is designed and in place. They already have all those details in terms of where it's going to be pumped to, the fact that we're going to be pumping, the fact that it's going to take one summer season.
Right.
All those things are.
The areas where it's going to be
where
done,
we're actually dredging. So-
where it's going to end up.
Right.
Okay, I think that sounds good. I'm just, as a committee member who doesn't know as much as you guys do about this, what I'm saying really is, is there something about the dredging that we as a committee should know and should be putting forward with this that we haven't? And if there is, let's identify it and do it. And if there isn't, fine, it's a package and we can move it along. That's all. See, because you guys know more about the dredging than I do. And I just want to make sure that we don't have something that you would suggest that we should be having to put forward with the idea, and let's do it. And if there isn't, then let's move on to the next thing. And if that's a done deal, fine. And I'm very happy with that. But I just want to make sure that we have it packaged.
I think we don't know what we don't know, but I think the thing that worries me the most of what we don't know or what we may not be doing right is the selling of this to the to the NHESP. The importance as a community, the importance of the livelihood of not only the community, but also the Berkshire community at large and Stockbridge specifically, and generations later on if this project isn't done. And I'm not sure that I sometimes wonder if they get that understanding, but I'm not sure that goes in the lake management plan. I don't know. I really don't know.
I see no reason, and I'm doing this with the annual select board, selectmen's report, okay?
Right.
Where I've called upon somebody to just give me a blurb, give me a couple of sentences about this topic.
Right.
Okay? So I see no reason why we can't incorporate some kind of a basic overview of here's the plan, the actual diagram of where we're going to be dredging, the actual diagram of here's where it's going to be pumped to.
And the
those
reason-
basic details, and incorporate that into here.
Can Greg Wellenkamp help on that?
Well, he can help us.
We
but
have
we've
all
got
that information, so it's just a
But do
matter
you
of.
suggest also putting in there the reason why this project is so important in bullets?
I don't think that's part of the.
No, I agree with you. I'm not, that's why I'm just addressing what Charlie might.
Yeah, but I don't
brought
think,
up.
I think what we need to focus on is the lake management plan being put together, because that was the
Right.
one thing they really emphasized is they want to see a lake management plan. So I think if we can just incorporate what we do have, the specifics about that dredging project, and incorporate that into here, under that heading, and get this thing show on the road, and we get something put together, that we have that. to
Should
help
we
convince
should we get together with Greg and just write up the outline?
Yeah.
And then give it to the Stockbridge Bowl Committee
Yeah,
to put in that? Let's set up a time, the three of us.
Okay.
To do that.
Good.
Charlie, thank you.
Wait, can we circle back around to our priority? I think we're getting a field on a few things and they're important, but if we want to get the prioritization, then we need to do that, not the details. If we get in the minutia, we're going to lose our way. And back to, if you do know that it'll take one summer and where the debris is going for dredging, that doesn't really need to go in our actions, right?
No.
But it needs to go in
An addendum.
an addendum.
yeah,
Right.
it's the detail of how we're going to go about it.
So is there any other thing that we want to prioritize?
don't know.
There's some things already in place. Somebody's phone.
There's a phone.
I think remediation actions, I mean, in general, any remediation action we have to take is a high priority. So as things come up, and we don't know what they're necessarily going to be from year to year, but I think that's, to us, a high priority. In other words, that's a do it now kind of scenario, regardless.
Give an
of what-
example.
Yeah, the water chestnuts. And it could be
That's-
any other invasive
We've been talking about that
species.
for 3 years.
The other thing, along what you're saying, though.
Were just
Roxanne, I think-
identified like about a year ago.
A couple of years ago, I have,
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
You have to put it in.
But it doesn't matter.
it's on
No
the,
difference.
High priority, and the
As you
town's
said, let's not get-
committed. Mike has already committed to
They'll take care of it.
hire, we will hire people to come in, professionals to come in and remove them.
great.
So that's already a done deal.
I was going to say, let's make sure that we're clarifying the difference between maintenance and actions.
Right,
I think they're two different things.
right,
The priority should
Remediation,
be action.
actions.
right.
Some sort of an algorithm, I think, is what we're after. we find this, we do A. If we find that, we do B.
Right.
And there's something that we do every single year,
Yeah.
every so often in a year.
I think maintenance
I think
is a
that's the
whole
matrix for
category
life.
unto itself.
Yeah,
It's
then the
something that's going to
minutia-
be all the way across this timeline. If you've got a
Right, across the
timeline,
timeline.
that's every year.
Yeah, I think I like it better when you showed it to me in a horizontal chart.
Okay,
Yeah.
That makes more sense. yeah,
Okay.
Rather than vertical.
Yeah.
sure, I can do that.
Because they're all priorities.
So Charlie, getting back to what Charlie wants to do. So we've got the dredging, so we have a meeting for the dredging. The harvester, is that something we want to discuss right now? About,
We have a plan already, this,
for the harvester?
right.
Yeah. So is there anything we don't know that we should know? I'm not sure how to answer that.
Is the harvester working is the big thing.
Yeah, well, that's,
Well,
I don't know
I got
that.
an update from Hugh this past week, and basically it's actively being worked on. They have to replace the engine. So that's the,
We need
it'll definitely be ready.
a new harvester or a used harvester. This harvester is pushing what, 35?
no, we're talking about.
Oh,
two
this is
different
the
harvesters.
small.
Oh, you're talking about small ones?
The small one needs a new engine.
The number
Yeah.
one, it needs a new engine. They did need to
Right.
replace the engine. All the welding and all that has been done. All that physical work has been done. They need to replace the engine. They need to find one and just put it in. So it's definitely going to be ready for harvesting here.
Well, that's a good thing to know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And when does the monthly water testing in the bowl start? Is it April? Is it March? Is it?
We should start in April because a lot of times you don't have ice out until then.
Okay,
Yeah, it's usually April.
I think Mike takes care of that.
yeah,
Yes.
okay. And when does the mussel station open? Does that Memorial Day?
Memorial Day weekend,
Okay,
and it goes through Columbus Day.
right. Indigenous Peoples' Day. All right. I don't think there's anything else we can do until we then put time. You wanted time frames on things.
Can I make another
Go ahead,
suggestion?
Michael.
Jamie, why don't you get together? I'll do someone. Maybe it's easier, maybe sometimes doing this alone, sometimes
You miss something.
not miss something, but you may not think of something. In other words, sometimes it's not a positive or negative because just getting this is so important, what you wrote out, because from that we can extrapolate how we want to do it, as long as we have the individual items on the list, which was great. What I'm saying is, for the next meeting, we want to have the 0 to 3 years in place.
Right.
And I think that if we can earlier send an email to all the committee members, these are the things that we're working on for the next meeting, but within a week, not, within a week from now, to getting that to them. And it's not necessarily the minutes that we wrote, but a specific action that we want from all of us, that these are the things that we want for the next week is details or whatever you have in mind about these 0 to 3 year project, or word it in such a way, I may not be wording it right, but next meeting, as Charlie says, we should sort of have this in place.
Right. Well, I mean, the main purpose right now is to get this to GZA.
Right.
We're not creating the actual format of how it's going to show up in the lake management plan. They're going to do that, and that's what they do, and they have experience with it. Our main thing is to identify what our priorities are, what are the ongoing maintenance issues that we have. Here are all the potential actions we'd like to be able to take at some point in time. But this is the sum total of what we want incorporated into this document, and here's our priorities.
Maybe GCA should do the fleshing in because they're the ones that have the expertise in this area.
Well, then we pretty much got it. I mean, to send to GZA, even from this meeting, we pretty much have it.
I think if we put it in like a horizontal timeline, it makes sense. And so you got your 0 to 3, and here's the stuff we need to address immediately. And here's the ongoing, which shows up all the way across. All your maintenance
Right.
items are going to show up all the way across. And then you're going to have optional items, optional actions that we might want to take in the future, which is going to be hydro raking, benthic mats, drawdowns, the thermal imaging, which we haven't mentioned, in the hydrology study. So we have those other items that are in there that, and how do we feel about those? The thermal imaging and the hydrology, how do we prioritize that stuff?
You keep
I
mentioning.
like this. I think that Jamie did a great job of organizing this. Thank you, Jamie. This is a very good organization. I think I suggest that we do have it, at least to the extent that what we ought to do is to put this to GZA now and say to them, do we have it? Is there something else you want us to put into this? Is there something we're not seeing? You want us to do this differently? Give them a tentative thing right now. We've got it. And then let them give us a little feedback on it. And then we can just put the whole thing into a finalized thing, maybe at the next meeting. If we can get this together, and then we'll be all set. So in other words, I think we've got what we need to give a tentative idea to GCA. I don't see any reason why they can't give us feedback about it. And then I make a motion that we submit this to GZA the way we have now as a tentative idea, get their feedback and ask them if they can give it to us for the next meeting so that we can move forward on this.
I like it.
Okay. Second
Yeah,
is
it's a soft-
made a motion, so anyone,
I'll
Second
second.
it.
and all in favor?
Aye.
I,
Who wants benthic barriers?
no, it was just an option that when Pat, I was asked about the Benthic barriers, and Pat had done a in-depth study of how to control the milfoil. And one of the things in that, Pat, you're there? One of
I am
the
here.
one of the options was this, whether it's used or not, but it should just be put in as an option, maybe for the beach, maybe just for the beach. I'm not saying it works. I'm just saying it was just brought up.
Gary, Mike, you're absolutely right about the benthic barriers. When we were looking at it, they're effective for very small areas and are most appropriate for swimming areas. And it's really not just even milfoil, it's making the swimming areas better for anybody. So it could be for the town beach. It also could be for Mackinac Shores, Beechwood, what have you. I think it's something that you need to just keep in your quiver as that might address swimming areas all around the lake.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just an option.
Keep it there.
Right. Let's see. And do we have any updates from Sewer and Water Commission? I don't know if you had a meeting.
We had a discussion with Sewer Water, which was interesting as the selectmen and women were there. We had a combined meeting. It was a very interesting meeting for those of you who were able to see it on Zoom. There had been some discussion and rumors about the town that we were holding back on sewer expansion, and some individuals asked specifically why they were not being included in some of the planning, why some individuals were able to get the sewer and water to connect them and others were not able to, and they had to put out their own funds. So we had to clarify those questions. The official the present thoughts from the sewer water is there isn't a lot of money there for us to be able to sewer the whole town, although that would be great. So if that ever comes to fruition, it's going to have to be a decision made at the select board, and it's going to have to be town meeting. I did bring up one of the issues what I think is a concern to this body, and that is the influx of nutrients into the lake from septics that are not functioning well. And this appears to be something that keeps going. I think with Jim Willits and Charlie Kenny, we can continue the discussion. But I think, as I listen to everyone talk about hydro dredging and hard dredging and all sorts of mechanical ways to get rid of the the invasive species. I'd like to just bring this body back to the fact that we are dumping, in some cases, and I don't know the exact amount or what exactly we're dumping into the water, but we do know that septics that fail, and we don't know how many of them are failing. So this is where we have to do water testing. And Mike does do that. And last time I spoke to Mike, it appears that we're under the threshold, but I think that's an ongoing thing. And I think the water sewer is concerned as to whether we should look at this a little closer. And I think this body in particular should be more concerned about how to hold back the nutrients which are promoting the growth of this invasive and water lilies and milfoil and all that stuff, which obviously requires all the nutrients. So, we bring it back to the fact that we are doing a lot of good things here and that we're trying to keep this very important asset of the Berkshires intact. But I think we have to look down the road and keep it clear and look at the areas around the bowl and make sure that we're following the rules and regulations. And water sewer will keep an open mind about extending it, but we don't have the money at this point to extend it to as far as we want to. So,
Michael had his hand up.
I just have that's one of the concerns on the west side, because the west side of the lake, doesn't have town sewer. And Lake Drive, I know that they've been trying to put that 38 homes, basically, which is the second largest association around the lake after Beechwood. So we're trying to get that importance because nobody had, when I say nobody, there are about 4 homes that might be connected to it. The ones closest to where it goes across the outlet. But we haven't received, I know that sewer and water has a priority list. It was explained to us. But we'd like to see it, or we'd like to know the priority list. From what I understood from Mike Canales, is sort of like he was going to ask the sewer and water what that meant, and can it be added, changed, whatever, because it's in flux.
Right.
Depending.
That's what we discussed.
And you can speak.
In our joint meeting, okay?
Uh-huh.
So the major priority right now for sewer and water is they have to do an I&I. They have to do an inflow and infiltration study. They're in phase 3 of that. And we can fund that, and we approve the funding from the ARPA funds to fund that next step. We are ordered to do that because with this record-breaking rainfall, we're above capacity. So we were ordered to do that. That has been ongoing. We're in phase 3, and I can't remember the exact number that we allocated. It was something like $119,000 from ARPA funds. And then we were waiting for the phase 4, which is actually the remediation steps, actually correcting where we have these issues. So we're waiting for that number to come in because this is a huge issue. A lot of people are not necessarily aware of the fact that water and sewer guys were having to, for days on end, all day and into the night until sometimes 11 p.m., have to take a tanker truck down to Park Street to keep pumping out the catch basins down there. So it's a huge issue. We know we have a major issue on Elm Street in terms of really ancient water and sewer. We need to reline those pipes. So there's a lot of issues attached to this. Clearly, that is their top priority. That was what was discussed with us. And so we approved funding for that.
Right. But this committee is basically about the Stockbridge Bowl and keeping it safe and healthy. So the discussion is really.
That's part of our discussion.
Yeah. So I understand that the water department, all that, it's constantly in crisis, I'm sure. I mean, that's just the nature. Yeah. That's just the nature of the beast, as they say.
Situation where we're experiencing a lot more rainfall.
Yeah.
So this is overwhelming.
We had to double
We
our.
have to address those issues right now.
Absolutely.
However, it was also discussed that maybe we should come up with a master plan for the extension
Right.
of water and sewer. And so that was, I think pretty much everybody agrees that, yes, that's the way to go. It's not that we will never extend any sewer lines. It's that it's not going to happen overnight. And you really need to study the entire situation and then prioritize the entire situation of whomever, whatever area of town is not currently connected. So that is the next step, is come up with a master plan. Then it has to be prioritized based on where it is. And clearly, from our point of view, and I think from any rational person's point of view, anyone around the lake has a higher priority because we want to limit
Right.
the nutrients going into the lake.
So let's circle back. Thank you, John, for your report. And also, I did put it under incidents and irregularities, the septic leaks, because it's not measurable yet. Like, you don't exactly know where it's coming from, but so.
I have a
Well, it is Jim Willis.
Haven't-
I have a,
one thing we haven't mentioned was
Go ahead.
potential drawdown. Where would that?
I put it in actions because I wasn't,
I think it's a potential
Why,
act.
why do you feel, why do you?
it's also not
Because I've been,
consistent.
I've been doing underwater videoing for over 20 years in the lake, each spring. And I see a definite improvement after we have a major drawdown and some good freezes. Not every year, but I mean, the Charo was growing like crazy for a while there. And then we stopped doing the drawdown and now it's gone. So.
It's not gone.
Plus, it helps, it saves the shoreline from erosion in the wintertime. So, I mean, it's a double-edged sword.
But I didn't
Yeah, the
think it was
most-
gone. I thought there was tons of it over in the Beechwood area and
The most we can draw down.
But a lot of other places, I did 22 transects around the lake and in the channel. And a lot of, where there was a lot of milfoil, there was chara growing, especially up to about maybe 7 or 8 feet. Because that's about where the drawdown, a 2-foot drawdown will go down to maybe 4 or 5 feet.
right.
And, so that clears that out. But what's happening now is the milfoil is starting to creep back into those areas. So, I'm just wondering, should we put that on something we want to do right now? Or are we going to be hitting somebody's hot button and, down in Boston someplace?
Sure, like maintenance instead of action,
Yeah,
like ongoing maintenance.
yes.
But I don't think that's necessarily an ongoing thing, not to mention, I think Conservation Commission has to approve it.
Yeah, that would,
So I think it's still, it should be there
Now-
and it should be there as a potential action.
we should probably go in front of Conservation Commission and make, ask them if there's anything we can do, or is it completely off the table?
You know how far we can draw down. We're
Yeah, I
limited.
know where we
Yeah.
can go.
Yeah, we're limited.
Yeah.
What we can do.
Yeah, the thing is, the NHESP, the less for the dredging, at various meetings, not the last one, but before that, one of the things that was compensating, that we wrote all these different things, was the drawdown, limiting the drawdown or as little as possible for them. That's what they want to see for the dredging to go forward. They like the idea that we don't draw down. I'm not saying we should or we shouldn't, because I don't know the biology or the eco, whatever it is for the lake, but we're caught in between we're caught by two parents, the NHESP and the DEP, and I'm not sure they're talking to each other.
Probably.
But I know NHESP really wanted us to limit the drawdown.
Let's see what Conservation
Yeah.
says.
Yeah.
I could bring it to the next meeting. I could ask informal, because not
Can
in.
you come?
Yeah, you could. It's
let me-
Tuesday, this coming Tuesday at 7.
Let me borrow your pen, Mike.
Sure.
So, anything else from your meeting, John?
No, I think that was it. I think that it's the prioritization. Mike had asked a good question. I've never seen a priority list. Well, I think that the problem right now is the influx of all this water into the water treatment plant. We have a certain level that we treat, that we can't exceed that level. That creates a lot of red flags, and the infiltration of standing water and from overflow is creating a real problem. So that's going to take a lot of money, and it's going to take a lot of time. And I think that the sewer expansion is sort of taking a step back, especially because, we're treating 400,000 gallons of water a day, and, much of it is unfortunately rainwater, and we need to stop that. Otherwise, we're going to exceed the capacity. So to take on more sewer line,
Can I ask you a question? When you say capacity, what happens when it exceeds the capacity? What happens?
What happens is there are red flags set up. If we exceed 85% of capacity,
Yeah, what physically happens?
what physically happens is you cannot be sure that you're putting clean water back into the
Okay.
river.
All right.
And that creates an issue.
Right.
So,
Because I think I've noticed the last 5 years, the whole rains that we've had I've never seen that. When I first moved to Lake Drive, I mean, I was president for 6 years, and we never had to redo the roads until maybe 5-6 years ago. All of a sudden now, these rains. So I'm wondering if that's something that you've got to look at, or the town should look at of increasing that capacity, because it looks like it's happening more and more.
That's what the INI is for. The
Is that what it's
INI
for?
is to identify where the problem areas are in terms of that infiltration, and to then ultimately address it. Phase 4
It's
is
strange.
addressing it. So
Yeah.
that's what they're doing, and
Yeah.
we have to do it based on the DEP. The red flags went up.
Yeah.
They heard from them,
Right.
and they said, no, you're over capacity. And according to Tony, I think it was I think the percentage he threw out was like 50% more.
yeah.
But how do you control that? I mean, if it rains, it rains. I mean.
Well, you
what-
control it by preventing the infiltration of these old clay pipes, which are 100
Okay, I
years
don't know,
old.
yeah.
Yeah, so these pipes are basically allowing a lot of the rainwater in, and that rainwater then is going into the treatment plant.
Okay.
And it's creating a false amount of water to be treated. But to your point, the other one that I was thinking about is, lots of the environment around the bowl has changed. Maybe 20, 30 years ago, there's a lot more absorbing capacity
Absolutely.
along the shores.
And
That
you
isn't
had
there
more
anymore.
temporary people. In other words,
Yeah.
now it's really, people just used it cabins in the summer or whatever
Yeah.
it is. But now it's much more large homes.
You got black tops
You got
everywhere.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
absorbing anything.
Yeah.
Right, that's just, stormwater draw.
Yeah, it's just a changing environment. There's no doubt about it. And
Hey, can I just say something about what John said?
Of course.
I really appreciate what John Ladici said about the sewers, and this is, and of course it relates to the Board of Health, and I'll just sort of put this in. The invasive species, the cyanobacteria, these are signs of the eutrophication of the lake. That's basically what they are, and they speak to that as evidence of that. And obviously, the sewer and water is one. The extension of the sewer, whatever, is a potential solution to the certain aspects of the eutrophication of the lake that are caused by development around the lake. But I want to say that just about, and I think it's extremely important, and it's also important, as Roxanne said, and as John said, that the existing sewerage and sewer and water structures are maintained. I mean, that has to be a first priority. You can't let them go sour, extending out into other areas to just to make those other areas good. We have to at least hold on to what we've got, and the people in town who already have this in place rely on it, and they need to be protected. They need to have this maintained. But I also want to say, just from the point of view of the Stockbridge Bowl, everything that I put forward just about has been with the idea, and all the ideas on the list that I've contributed to have been with the idea of making up for the fact that we can't extend the sewer. And that some of the things about the lake, like underwater drainage through hydrocalciferous channels, could be eutrophying the lake in ways that we don't know about. All of these things have been put up, so that I just want to reassure everybody that even though we might not be able to do this one thing, all these other things that we've talked about, at least a lot of them, have to do with minimizing that eutrophication.
Well, I want to ask this question again. I mean, we've got thermal imaging and I think the hydrology study. How do we prioritize those, Charlie?
Well, I think that that's a good question. I think the imaging study is a first idea. And I think that then triggers how urgent the rest of the idea is. I think that if you consider that, Mike Buffoni brought up the thermal imaging. I haven't researched that, but I will for the next meeting so that I can answer your question specifically. I believe the thermal imaging can tell us if we have an ongoing problem right now of significance. That's what I think. How to implement that and prioritize then would be based on that. So I'll answer that question by doing my homework on it so that I can answer it better the next time at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Charlie, wouldn't,
Mike was here.
Charlie, wouldn't the experts, the limnologists be able to answer that, like GZA or whatever, because they are trained and have experience?
Well, that's a good point. I think we could throw that out to them and see what they say.
Because it's on our chart, maybe they'll say yes, no, maybe, like, because they are
And maybe we
trained.
put it in the 0 to 3 year. In other words, that's up there. It's something that we're thinking about doing soon. If it makes sense to them. If they don't think it makes sense, then they're going to tell us.
Isn't that,
Isn't that why we're sending this document as a temporary so they can look it over and see what is?
Yeah, but I don't mind emailing Court and his group myself. I do that all the time anyway. I'll communicate with them and get the info and they can also weigh in on it.
Okay.
I think we should just add that to the testing. I mean,
I
we're
think didn't I?
it's all part of the testing.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we should put that in the 0 to 1 to 3.
Yeah.
I put it in testing and.
I don't think the 0 to 3 should be, I think it should be just things that really need to be done
Okay,
immediately.
Yeah.
right.
Have a.
All right. Anyone else have anything they want to add?
Jamie, James, you've had your hand up forever, so you talk.
Well, it's okay. I was just gonna touch on a couple points without belaboring the whole septic sewer issue. And, one of the things that we see a lot in other towns for those that are connected to sewer is, are there sump pumps connected and draining into the sewer systems? And I know we worked in Lee and Lennox a few years ago when we do housing inspections and other stuff, is really remind people to not put their sump pumps into their sewer lines, because all you're doing is pumping groundwater in over capacity of your sewer systems. Related to the septic around the bowl, it's really hard to figure out who's in compliance and who isn't, because we don't have a regulation or a system where we monitor every septic system 12 months out of the year. I will tell you that a lot of the failed systems are putting pre-treatment systems in, but there's still probably a lot of properties out there that don't have an updated septic system because they haven't sold, it hasn't failed. But there are tools out there, and I'm not trying to float this to cause more controversy because we're already coming out of COVID with enough mandates and regulations. But I know that there's other bordering communities in Berkshire County that have a lot of lakes that through their association bylaws, they require like tank pumping once a year. So they at least know that, hey, this is an expectation if you're going to join.
I do it twice. Yeah.
For example, I know I can't remember, it's escaping me. It's up in Otis. It's off the main road there. They have an association where they require Otis Woods. They require that. In addition, I know that the town of Monterey actually has a bylaw that requires any septic within 400 feet of Lake Garfield requires pre-treatment no matter what. Now you can't go backwards, you can only go forwards. And that's a little bit of an extreme regulation, but anytime there's like a septic system within a certain setback, it automatically triggers a pre-treatment system. And the reason why they do that, it treats the septic wastewater effluent, so it's actually really clean before it gets into the groundwater. And B, those types of systems are in perpetuity over the life of the system, has to be maintained twice a year. Whereas a conventional septic system, you put a tank in a field in, some people don't even maintain that. And so there's actual oversight with that. So those are just a couple of thoughts and
Jim.
ideas to throw in the toolbox.
Go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. A pre-system. Can you just clarify?
Sure. So a pretreatment system is look at the Stockbridge wastewater treatment plant, that massive system that they have. And it's a microcosm of that, what we call a pretreatment system. So instead of having your conventional 1,500 gallon septic tank, which gravity feeds to the field, it's an aerator, there's microbes in there, and actually it breaks down the entire process. And as that goes into the septic field, it's basically like drinking water. And when we do pretreatment is required under certain triggers. Like if they can't meet the wetland setback, for example, and they can't meet property line setback because the lot's so small or the soil is really tight, we'll push the pretreatment, but it's a case by case, site by site perspective. But, it's something to think about long term. And because if we're talking about a sewer expansion that we're talking 10, 20 years down the road, and we still know we're getting some type of effluent into the lake, those are things to think about and put on the table for discussion.
I'm wondering if there's a form that, we know who lives around the lake, that could be sent out every 6 months. I don't know if you can mandate it or not. I know we have a pretreatment at our house then, and we clean it, we empty it out twice a year. They come in and they empty out the tank twice a year. But I'm wondering if there's a form for everybody just saying, did you do it or something? Because I think you're right. I think probably a lot of people don't think about it unless the company itself that maintains it tells you to do it. That's very often the company that maintains those pretreatments.
Yeah. So Mike, for those pretreatment systems that we approve, they're required to have a contract.
That's right.
Now, sometimes things do fall through the cracks where you do a private sale, cash deal, there's no communication, and then people don't re-up their contract. At some point, that contractor that services your system will call us. And then I try to close the loop on that. I'll reach out and say, hey, you purchased this home. Yeah. Oh, by the way, you're required to do this, or we'll pull your compliance certificate. So we kind of close those gaps, but there's still a lot of systems out there, folks, that are really old. Houses never sold. They're not backing up yet, but they're probably failing, but we don't know that. And we'll never really get a full understanding of what's left out there. But yeah, it's just, we try our best, but
How long do the pretreatments work for? Like when people put a pretreatment into their house, how have you seen a life expectancy of pretreatment systems? Is it?
I've never seen one fail yet.
Okay, great.
Because, sometimes you'll get a situation where, I don't know, it's a seasonal home, you go away to Florida and your toilet starts leaking. But when the operator goes out there twice a year, there's actually a meter on the pretreatment septic system, even if they're on a well, that shows how many gallons of water are infiltrating in. And if you're not home, Mike, for example, and you got a 3-bedroom house and you're drawing in 660 gallons per day, something's wrong. The tank's leaking, pulling in groundwater, you got a leaky toilet, you got a leaky fixture, and they're able to red flag that and fix it. And so there's a lot of fail safes on these pretreatment systems. However, they're more expensive to put in. And typically how Title V laws work is if you put your house up for sale, the seller is usually required to pay for the septic before the property transfers. And no one's ever going to put extra money willingly to upgrade a pretreatment system over a conventional system unless they're forced to. So those are just thoughts and ideas as we move along that, we could look at bylaws, we could look at Board of Health regulations, but before you get to that point, we need to get an understanding of what systems are in compliance, what aren't, and which is hard to figure out.
I know it doesn't help the nutrients going into the lake with the pretreatment. The nutrients still go in the lake, I would imagine. right?
Now
I
with
mean,
the pre-treatment.
Not as,
Not with
Not with the
pre-treatment, no.
Oh,
no.
I'm happy to hear that. So that even encourages me to say what I'm going to say is I'm wondering if there's a way of subsidizing all these people that have old systems might be cheaper than to have pre-treatments in their home than putting in all the sewer line. In other words, like they're individually, if this works almost as well as a sewer line, is this not maybe, I'm just thinking out loud, I don't know what a pre-treatment costs, but they probably cost $40,000 now or whatever. I know mine costs.
I go up a couple figures. Well, depending on the site, it's site specific, obviously.
Okay,
You
yeah.
got to do perk tests, you got to get engineers involved, there's permits, but a typical pre-treatment's probably between 40 and 60, depending on the site.
Yeah, right. But what I'm saying is it might be anybody that, to all the people that have the old systems that live around the lake, it might be cheaper to help subsidize or help them put in a pre-treatment system than it is to put in this whole system of, I'm not trying to say you shouldn't put it in for the lake because I'm going to get killed when I get back to the house. But it's sort of like your house being off the grid.
well, I mean,
In a good way.
There's a couple of levels of this. One thing is when you were first talking about sending something out to ask people, have they done this? I think that's part of the education piece of this.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
That's education. That's like just giving people a heads up.
Right.
Then we've got the possibility of discussion of suggesting bylaw changes, which is another one. And then you've got the idea that, well, can we subsidize? Well, then that's a matter of, are there grants out there that are available to offer that kind of assistance in this interim period? Because, Water and Sewer Commission may be looking at down the road a master plan and then prioritizing that for us. And so there may be targeted areas, and there's certainly going to be areas that are not going to be feasible at all when you get really far north in the town. So what are the alternatives? And that is an alternative for those areas that may not ever get addressed on our sewer
That's a
lines.
good point. I mean, with this commission, we should be concerned about the lake.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Just, this is what we got to
That's what we
concentrate
gotta
on.
concentrate on.
Right. All right. Thank you,
Jim,
Jim. Oh, did
I have
you-
a question for Jim. Those pre-treatments, are there different types? I've heard about the jet system.
There's multiple ones. There's multiple pre-treatment systems out there that DEP approves. Some do different things. Some take out more phosphorus, some take out more nitrates and whatnot. But yeah, the most popular one is the jet system. There's the fast system, there's the geotextile systems, but there's tons of them out there. And we're really pushing more pre-treatments as much as I can, because I will tell you, based on all my years experience doing perk tests at lake drives, the soils are absolutely terrible out there. There's ledge issues, there's a lot of silt and clay issues, and the slower the perk, the bigger the field. And if you can put a pre-treatment system in, the code actually allows you to cut your field size by 50%. Because you don't need because conventional systems, you need all that square footage to treat the flow coming from the house based on bedroom count. And it's all subject to the type of soil and the perk rate. And we get really bad soils out in Lake Drive. And it's always bothered me that there's so many, we still got quite a few tight tanks out there too. From years ago, before pre-treatments were even approved, there was no other option. So people threw in tight tanks, and nobody wants a tight tank anymore.
Right.
You shouldn't have a tight tank, number two, I think. I mean, it's just.
Well, back in the old days, Mike, there was no other option.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying nowadays, and one last thing, could there be a community pre-treatment concept, like for 4 houses or 6 houses?
Yes, yeah, and I discussed that a few months ago with this
you
group
did,
about, and I think when
But we couldn't find a spot for it. Maybe, have you come down to Lake Drive to see if there is an area for this?
So I did offer that maybe last summer, and I think there's a couple other folks that were doing some surveys
Right.
neglected, I forget their names now.
Yeah.
And I was more than willing to go down there, you would have to get people together, you would have to find a community space, and absolutely, the code does require shared systems, and that, in fact, that's something I would promote, is if you can get a cluster of houses into a shared pretreatment system. Obviously, there's some legal channels you got to go through, you got to hire attorneys and easements and all that stuff, but we do have multiple, through the Tri-Town district area, we have a lot of private septic systems that are shared. And so, yeah, absolutely. You find a common space and you can put a handful of houses on there. Absolutely, Mike.
No, I understand. The issue is Lake Drive. It's just the geography of Lake Drive is very difficult. Yeah. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. And Pat, did you still have a question?
It's more of an observation, and I know we're running way past the time, so I just throw this out probably for discussion the next time.
Okay.
In terms of prioritizing and doing timelines, funding is probably going to be an issue. And, even if we could do everything we wanted to do on the entire list, funding may become an issue. So I just bring that up in terms of talking about when we can actually do certain things, because if the money's not there, even if we have the permits and everything else, we may have to delay dredging in particular, because it's a very expensive and one-time proposition. So I just throw that out for thought. And obviously at this point, it's too late to have the discussion now, but I just wanted to make that point to everybody that funding is going to be, and budgeting the whole lake management plan is an issue.
Yes, thank you, Pat. And I put it down and we can talk more next time,
Yeah.
if that would be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great, Jamie. Thank you.
All right, anything else, group? Thank you for your time and your service. And so our next meeting is the 18th at 8 a.m. So can we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
John, okay, a second?
Second.
Roxanne, and all in favor? Aye. Thank you. Have a great weekend.
All right, thank you.